So, as said, my name is Gunnar Lindqvist. I'm from the University of Skövde, and I co-wrote this paper with Joakim Kävlestad, who's sitting over there and chilling. So today's society is so technical driven, so it's quite hard to commit a crime with even leaving any type of digital evidence. So back in the days, the police units use mostly physical evidence, but nowadays it's hard to commit an act without leaving any type of evidence. So, for example, a digital device can be the target and thus leaving the evidence, or be the means. Suppose that you use your mobile phone or something to blackmail someone, or it can have a connection to IT. So, say for example, you can just have your phone in your pocket and roam and speaking with a cellular tower or something, and leaving GPS coordinates, or just roam through a supermarket and roaming with Wi-Fi. So that makes it quite hard. So one can argue that almost to a certain degree that most crimes are IT related. So, and the information-packed mobile phone is a terrific device to use when we do digital forensic, for example, because arguably the mobile phone is the most personal device with photos, chats, etc. So it can be quite useful when a police forensic uses it, because they can find so concrete evidence, and it can help us to facilitate a criminal prosecution, so the criminal is held accountable for their action. So the problem, though, is the invasion of privacy. So, for example, someone has been a victim of a crime. That's a bad thing, and then they have to hand in their mobile phone to the forensic unit, thus creating another potential negative consequence for the poor victim of the crime. Because when they do digital forensic, they look through the whole mobile phone, for example, which can be quite perhaps embarrassing, because you have so much personal information and maybe embarrassing photos, etc. So you have to trust the digital forensic that does the work, that they have integrity and don't spread the information. So because of that, people may not want to report a crime and hand in their mobile phone, and thus they have a lower willingness to report crimes, which makes it hard to determine the number of crime, and thus creating a dark figure of crime, meaning that the actual number of actual crimes are unknown. And because people don't therefore report crimes, criminals are not held accountable, because for example, victims of crime don't report, or they don't provide, for example, a mobile phone, which can help to create a persecution to a criminal. So therefore, the research aim was to identify the willingness to report crime, and see the willingness to report crime with additionally when someone hands in their mobile phones to the police and for the digital forensic unit, where they use the phone as evidence. And the idea was to see what kind of impact privacy has, if it creates concerns for people and thus makes them less willing to hand in the phone and report a crime. So yeah, and the idea was to use the mobile phone as the main device that someone hands in, because arguably could be the most personal device. So the way we did it was through a quantitative mobile phone survey. So we used Pulfish, which is a service. It's like, if you heard of Amazon MTurk or other types of services, where you can, for where they help to send out a survey. So the good thing with Confish was that it was sent through to random mobile devices. Thus, all the participants had actually a mobile phone, which was quite good. So, and before that, we had a pilot test to determine the time and see if anything was unclear or misunderstandable. And additionally, we used Reddit, which is a forum where we posted the survey and used the data as validation to see whether the data quality was good, because previous studies have used Reddit to do surveys and have found that the data quality is quite good actually. And the good thing with Reddit is that it was free to use, so why not? So we had 4 questions with the survey. So, and each question had 8 statements, which were measured through Likert scale. So we used a 7-point Likert scale with a midpoint, and additionally we used a non-responsive alternative. So Q1 and Q2 are quite alike. So as you can see, the following statement described criminal excess. We had 8 incidents, which were based on the 4 most reported crime types in Sweden. So our group focus was Swedish citizens. And the only difference between Q1 and Q2 is that they asked the same thing, but the difference is that Q2, someone has to additionally hand in their mobile phone in 2 days to the police. So the idea was to see whether there was a difference in regards of the willingness to report a crime between them two. And then with Q3 and Q4, Q3 had different types of statements regarding concerns if someone hands in their mobile phone to the police. And last were about different types of privacy concerns. So we try to measure how privacy-minded people are. So we had also 8 statements that was based on a taxonomy of Salon. So we had 4 types of privacy issues. So we studied the population, and therefore we used inferential statistics in order to draw a conclusion on the data sample. And additionally, we used Converse Alpha to test the internal consistency between all of the statements, and to see if there was a difference between Q1 and Q4, meaning when someone reports a crime with or without handing their mobile phone, if it was a difference. We used a paired t-test because it was the same sample size, and additionally we used person correlation to test if there were any correlation regarding the statement regarding privacy concerns or concerns regarding when someone has in their mobile phone to the police, to see if people who have more concern about something, if it's, for example, privacy, if they were more privacy concerned, that we could see a correlation between that. And as common use, we use 95% significance level. So the results were we had 400 respondents to our survey, and you can see that we had 58 males and 42% females. And when you're looking at the data here, you can see that the means are close to midpoint, because above the midpoint. So we used 7 Likert scales in each. So it went from 1 to 7. So as you can see, it's close to 4 or 5. And additionally, you can see the p-value from the worst test when we tested data relatives. So additionally, when we tested the statements, we had acceptable consistency between the statements by the Converse Alpha. So that was quite nice. And when we tested and we used the t-test, we saw that there was a statistical significance difference between them. That's meaning that showing that there is a difference where someone has to hand in their mobile phone. However, when we used correlation, we saw that there was no correlation between the variables. As you see, Q2, which were where someone has in their mobile phone, and Q3 and Q4 were about all the statements regarding privacy and concerns when someone answering the mobile phone. So we are close to the zero, thus meaning there was low correlation, which was not expected regarding the privacy issues that may occur. So key findings were that we found no meaningful correlation between each questions and statements or any other variable. So we can see that privacy is not a common cause of tendency according to the findings and the results. And on average, it seems that people may not have strong opinions because the mean was close to the midpoints, or it could be that people have strong opinions due to polarization, and thus the mean are close to the midpoint. So I think it could be due to lack of meaning, because people may not find it meaningful to hand in their mobile phone if someone stole your car, for example. But people may find it more meaningful if the crime is more obvious related to IT or a cybercrime, for example, where they find it meaningful. And we saw that actually in the data. So we had one question regarding someone gets a photo sent, and that had actually a high willingness to report the crime when they had to hand in their mobile phone also. So that could be to that they think that their mobile phone actually can help, and thus their willingness may be higher. And when just looking through a descriptive point of view, we saw that being without one's mobile phone seemed to be the most concerned thing for people. It could be to that we use our mobile phones so much and for almost anything, and it feels, at least for me, uncomfortable to go to the toilet without my mobile phone. I don't know why, but and we saw also that the severity of crime mattered. So the more the severe the crime were, the more willingness people were to report it, which was alike versus previous studies that have shown that the same thing. So our contribution of the work is that we indicate that privacy seems not to be a common cause of tendency to creating a lower willingness to report a crime and hand in the mobile phone. And it suggests that it may be due to, it could be to different subgroups of people. So people between ages of or subgroups regarding privacy may have different opinions. And it can also be used as a reference for future studies, because as the result indicated, there was a difference when someone had to hand in their mobile phone, but we couldn't see a correlation. So one can seek out for other type of impact and maybe see other type of issues. So obvious limitation were that we used Fontfish, so people who not had that survey couldn't do that. That surveys couldn't do the survey, unfortunately. And additionally, it can be hard for people because to answer the survey, because they may not have complete insight to the case or the different types of crime, because I hope that most people haven't been victims of a crime. So it's hard to have complete insight to see what you would actually do in such a situation where the police also wants your mobile phone to use it. And of course, social questions are also hard because you can just use all types of crimes. So for future work, one can use different samples, for example, ages, other countries, or explore different types of subgroups. And of course, other devices, for example, laptop or desktop can be used as regarding privacy. And one can also do into studies of actual victims of crimes or forensics units to see what they have to say about different types of concerns that people may have when they report a crime and hand in their mobile phone, for example. So in conclusion, the data did not support privacy as a common factor, or we didn't find no meaningful correlation for any variable, but this can be used for support future studies within the area and seek out if there difference between subgroups or ages, etc.